Tuesday morning, folks, and first off, apologies for not getting a video out yesterday. Honestly, by the time I sat down to record, there just wasn't much happening. I did toy with the idea of diving into a few other topics, maybe breaking down the squad depth for the millionth time, but let's be real, none of us were probably in the mood for that. Thankfully, though, today's a different story. There's a bit more going on, especially on the transfer front, and of course some sad but important news regarding a Celtic legend. So yesterday we received the heartbreaking news that John Clarke, one of the Lisbon Lions and an absolute Celtic icon, has passed away at the age of 84. Now, for anyone who's maybe newer to the Celtic story, let me give you a bit of background. John Clarke first joined Celtic from Larkhall Thistle when he was just 17 years old way back in 1958. Took him a couple of years to really bed himself in, but by the 1960 own season, he'd established himself as a key figure in the side. Back then his position was known as left half, which for the younger viewers or anyone not too familiar with the old footballing terms is more or less what we'd call a left-sided centre back these days. Clarke formed a formidable partnership with none other than Billy McNeill. Billy was the aggressive dominant presence in the air, charging into every aerial duel, while John Clarke was the cool composed figure sweeping up behind him. It was that calm, reliable style that earned him the nickname The Brush. And let's just say creativity when it came to nicknames wasn't exactly at a premium. In the 1960s, like most of the greats from that era, John Clarke's golden years at Celtic came under the management of Jock Stein. Of course, the standout moment for all of them was that incredible 1966-67 season. 5 trophies, a clean sweep, and the jewel in the crown that night in Lisbon. Now I think it's fair to say that Clarke was one of the more underrated figures in that legendary squad. When people list the heroes from that team, you'll always hear names like Billy McNeill for obvious reasons or Jimmy Johnstone. But Clarke's contribution was absolutely massive. Anyone who was around at the time or knows their Celtic history properly will tell you that. In fact, Clarke was such a trusted figure for Jock Stein that he was one of the first names on the team sheet during that period. And just to hammer home how important he was, here's a stat for you. Clarke and Tommy Gemmell were the only 2 players to be ever present throughout that historic season. Between April 1965 and September 1967, Clarke played in 140 consecutive matches for Celtic. 140, that's an incredible run by any standard and just shows how durable and reliable he was. After his playing days at Celtic came to an end in 1970, Clarke made a move to Greenock K Morton, which, let's be honest, is probably stretching the definition of a major club. But still, it was his next chapter. There's actually a bit of irony here. He once scored an own goal for Morton in a match against Celtic. So even after leaving, he still found the net for the hoops in a roundabout way. Goal scoring was never really his thing during his career, so that one must have raised a few smiles at the time. In terms of international football, he earned 4 caps for Scotland. That might sound a bit low for someone of his stature, especially for a Lisbon Lion. But from what I've read and what people have been saying, Scotland was absolutely stacked with talent back then. One of those caps came in a particularly memorable match, a union friendly draw against Brazil at Hampden Park, with 75,000 fans in attendance. And get this, Clarke was given the unenviable task of marking none other than Pelé. Not many players can say they went toe-to-toe with Pelé and came out with their reputation intact. But by all accounts, John Clarke did a fantastic job that night. Apparently, the Brazilian legend was kept unusually quiet, but while his playing days were impressive, it was after hanging up his boots that John Clarke truly showed what Celtic meant to him. He just couldn't stay away from the club. In 1973, he came back, initially working with the youth and reserve teams, and when Billy McNeill moved into management, John was right there beside him, serving as his assistant at Aberdeen and then back at Celtic. Their partnership on the pitch transitioned seamlessly to the dugout. Interestingly, and I'll admit this was something I hadn't fully realized until recently, Clarke even had a go at management himself. He had spells in charge of Stranraer and Clyde during the 80s and early 90s. But for many of us, especially those of my generation, the role we probably know him best for is as Celtic's iconic kitman, a job he did for the best part of 2 decades. During that time, he worked alongside the likes of Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, and Brendan Rodgers. Think about that for a second. A Lisbon Lion, one of the greats of our club's history, happily taking on the role of kitman just to stay involved with the club he loved. That says everything about the kind of man he was. And from what I've read and heard over the years, he didn't treat that job lightly either. He approached it with the same professionalism and discipline that defined his playing days. I came across a brilliant piece from a journalist the other day, reflecting on how Clark was still carrying out his kitman duties, well into his 70s, working tirelessly to keep standards high and support the players in any way he could. First team, players, academy lads, coaching staff, everyone leaned on John Clark at some point. Why wouldn't they? This was a man who had been there, done it, and won it all with Celtic. An absolute fountain of knowledge and experience. One particular memory that stands out for me was shortly after Billy McNeil's passing. Athletic Club Bilbao had awarded McNeil the One Club Man Award, a huge honor. That sadly came just after Billy's death. It was John Clark who traveled alongside McNeil's daughter Susan to accept the award on Billy's behalf. That moment just summed him up, always there for his friends, always representing the club with dignity and grace. If you sit back and take stock of it all, John Clark probably dedicated close to 50 years of his life to Celtic in one capacity or another. From first-team player to assistant manager, youth coach, kitman, ambassador, you name it, he did it. An incredible servant to the club and a genuine legend in every sense of the word. There are loads of quotes doing the rounds today in tribute to him, and there's one in particular that stuck with me. Clark once said, "I never wanted any of that fame or celebrity. It wasn't me. I preferred being in the background," and honestly, that says it all. A quiet, humble, loyal man who let his actions and dedication do the talking. Now shifting gears feels a bit awkward after reflecting on someone like John Clark. But there's also been some transfer chat doing the rounds. So moving on from that emotional tribute, let's talk about the current transfer noise. Because as always, there's a bit to unpack, starting with Nicholas Kuhn. Honestly, it's a bit of a weird jump going from John Clark's legacy to potential ins and outs, but that's the football world for you. Just last week I joked about how typical it would be for something like this to come up. And well, here we are. There's been a lot of chatter online, and even though I've not been glued to every single update, it's hard to miss the growing speculation. The name popping up most is RB Leipzig, who, let's remember, are one of Kuhn's former clubs. Reports are suggesting that talks between Celtic and Leipzig are at an advanced stage. This seems to be coming mainly from the German media, with Kicker magazine being mentioned as the original source. Now, I had a bit of a dig online trying to track down the exact article from Kicker, but couldn't find anything publicly posted. My guess is it was something from their print edition that's been picked up and spread by other outlets both in Germany and here in Scotland. So what's the truth? Hard to say, but when you add up the noises coming from both sides, Scottish and German media, it does start to feel like there's probably something going on behind the scenes. And to be fair, when you think about it, the move would make sense for everyone involved. From Nicholas Kuhn's point of view, moving to the Bundesliga is obviously a step up in terms of competition. It gets him back in the German football spotlight, right where the national team coaches can see him week in, week out. That's bound to help his international ambitions. For Leipzig, it's an easy sell. They know the player, they've had him before, and despite not currently having a manager in place, they seem well organized enough behind the scenes to keep making transfer moves. Now, from a Celtic perspective, it's definitely a bit more complicated. There's a part of me that feels like we've probably already seen the best of Kuhn. His form in the first half of last season was electric. Honestly, one of the best wingers I've seen play for us in recent years, not just in the Scottish Premiership but in Europe too. He tore defenses apart, and there were moments where you thought we'd struggle to keep hold of him long term, but then there's the other side of it. The second half of last season was rough. His performance levels dropped significantly, and it wasn't just for a game or two. It lasted for months. Some say it started after the Bayern Munich tie, but for me, I think it started even earlier. Around the turn of the year, maybe even after that game at Ibrox where he took a heavy knock. Whether it was confidence, focus, or something else entirely, he just wasn't the same player. And when that happens, you start asking yourself if his head was already elsewhere, maybe thinking about his next move. There's been a lot of chat about comments from his agent as well, talking about Celtic being a stepping stone. That was when he was flying at the start of the season. And looking back now, you can't help but wonder if that mindset played a part in his drop-off. So do Celtic cash in if Leipzig are offering somewhere around £15 million? That's 5 times what we paid Rapid Vienna for him just 18 months ago. It's not quite Kieran Tierney or Matt O'Reilly money, but still that's very good business. Considering how uncertain his form has been, it might just be the smart move. We could reinvest in a new right winger. Someone hungry, someone desperate to make a name for themselves. There's been a bit of noise about Benji, though I'm still not entirely sure if he's a winger or a midfielder. He doesn't exactly scream Out-and-out winger from what I've seen, not blisteringly quick, but apparently he's versatile. Meanwhile, over in the center-back department, more movement could be happening. Gustav Lagerbielke looks set to return after his loan spell in the Netherlands. He's said his goodbyes to Twente on Instagram with a very heartfelt message, but let's be honest, with 3 years left on his contract and with guys like Nerofsky and Welch also likely to be moved on the center-back area, feels like it's going to see some major changes. And just to wrap this up, there's been a line from Mark Hendry suggesting Celtic are ready to spend big this summer. Apparently at least one significant outlay is expected. Looking back at last season, we spent about £40 million over both windows, with $30 million of that coming last summer. With that in mind, and when you think about the positions we need to strengthen center-back, strikers, central midfield, it does make you wonder where that big investment will land. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. There's a growing murmur sweeping through the East End of Glasgow, one that could mark the end of a brief but eventful chapter at Celtic Park. Word on the street suggests that Kasper Schmeichel, the experienced Danish goalkeeper, might be on his way out of Celtic sooner than many had expected. It's far from official, of course. No statements, no farewells, no dramatic goodbyes at Lennox Town. But sources close to the club and whispers among fans are painting a picture of uncertainty surrounding the veteran shot-stopper's future with the Hoops. Signed amid much fanfare and expectations, Schmeichel brought with him a wealth of experience and a famous footballing surname, hoping to solidify the Parkhead goal in what was expected to be a season of consolidation and domestic dominance. Yet, things haven't exactly gone to plan. While there have been moments of brilliance, the overall feeling among many is that the fit just hasn't been quite right. Whether it's down to tactical preferences, fitness niggles, or simply the natural ebb and flow of a player nearing the twilight of his career, Schmeichel's time in Glasgow has been more muted than momentous. Some insiders are suggesting that both parties are quietly considering a parting of ways, a mutual decision that would allow Celtic to look towards a younger, long-term solution between the sticks, while Schmeichel himself might be eyeing one final move elsewhere, perhaps to a league where the tempo is more forgiving. But the challenges remain worthy of his stature. Nothing concrete has been set in stone. And as always with football, these things can shift with the wind. A strong showing in preseason, a couple of crucial saves in Europe, and all the talk might vanish into the mist. But for now, the rumor mill is churning, and it's saying that Kasper Schmeichel's days in the green and white hoops could be numbered. Watch this space. The summer transfer window is only just warming up. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.